Okay, so we are reading Dr. Wayne Dyer, The Shift. We are on chapter 4, page number 91. The 4 cardinal virtues that constitute our original nature.
67 of the PDF.
Please repeat. Page 67 of the PDF.
67.
One second. Shimangla, which net are
The
you
4
using?
cardinal virtues that constitute nature.
Shimangla, which net are you using? You're breaking up.
TV.
Huh?
Then I'll put on Geo. I'll
Put
go on Geo then.
Put on Geo. Is it charged? It's gone.
I'm trying to connect it to the computer. It's charged, but there's no connection. Abhi, I think I'll have to go with CBS only.
Acha, go.
The 4 cardinal virtues.
One second. Okay, go ahead.
The 4 cardinal virtues that constitute our original nature. There is a book I loved titled Hua Hu Ching, The Unknown Teachings of Lao Tzu by Brian Walker. In these pages, Lao Tzu mentions 4 cardinal virtues that are part of our original nature. These virtues must be practiced if we are to know the truth of our universe and achieve a life of meaning while in bodily form.
So again, what is he saying? Life in bodily form. So we want to reach that higher state of consciousness while we are in the bodily form. Not that only when we transcend this body, we have the ultimate OBE that we all have. One OBE is guaranteed to everyone. And then you achieve that higher state. While in the body, we want to achieve that higher state of consciousness.
While Brian Walker has done a masterful job in his book, I'd like to expand upon each of these virtues one by one. Here they are, with a detailed explanation. Reverence for all life. We begin life in this way, yet we then permit ego to engage us with complexity. Its demands pull the joy out of our days always. Trying to get someplace or acquire more is an exhausting enterprise. Ultimately, desiring meaning, we return to the place of our original nature. It seems that such a return must have prompted Voltaire to observe the following.
Okay, so now what happens? Reverence for all life, appreciation of everything that is around us, even the smallest thing. When you look at the resilience grid also, as soon as we go into appreciation, we shift to the right side of the grid. And the idea is to be on the right side of the grid. So reverence for everything that is there will automatically shift us there. What keeps us on the left side is always the ego. Ego will make us selfish. Ego will not make us care for anything else apart from ourselves. So the moment we start having reverence for everything, we automatically shift.
It seems such a return must have prompted Voltaire to observe the following. One always begins with the simple, then comes the complex, and by superior enlightenment, one often reverts in the end to the simple. Such is the course of human intelligence.
So again, when a baby is born, the baby is very simple. Then lots of belief systems are put on it and life starts to get complicated. And then we have an aha moment. Okay, when that aha moment comes, again we start shifting our state of consciousness. And if you see, most highly spiritual people are most simple. Why? Because they've dropped all attachments. Okay, they've dropped all the complexities in their life. They are not attached to anything. They are in the flow and they are happy with whatever is happening. So everything is happening according to what they want to happen. So again, very elegantly he's put it, that one always begins with the simple, then comes to the complex, and by superior enlightenment, one often reverts in the end to the simple. So you start from a simple and you come back to a simple. The more complexity you have in your life, the more jhamela you create for yourself.
When we return to our fromness, we are energized by a sense of wonder. The mysterious is welcome rather than eschewed, and we find renewed pleasure in the simplest of activities. We no longer want others to be something they're not.
So now this is again important. A sense of wonder starts coming. When we start, let's say you're seeing an ant walking, you can have wonderment in an ant walking. Okay, whatever is unknown starts to become welcome. Most of the time when you're operating out of ego, anything that is unknown is a danger to the ego, because the ego does not know how to handle it. But when we go into higher states of consciousness, then the mysterious, the unknown becomes more accessible to us. We are more accepting of that unknown, and we are more reveling in it, because we know ultimately that it is going to lead us to growth. So we find pleasure in it. Okay, and the other thing is, we start becoming accepting. So we start accepting people as they are. The more spiritual we become, the more accepting of people we tend to become.
In the meaning phase of life, we remove the complexities that ego has foisted upon us, and the reverence we feel is often an intensely exhilarating sense of awe that we notice in nature.
So now, whenever in nature always can make a deep connection with us. And when we start watching nature with an open-mindedness, in an altered state of consciousness, it has the way and means to actually shift us into an altered state immediately. Just watch a tree swaying and you will find peace in it. You will find that it can take you into an altered state. The rhythm that is there. You watch a leaf, just watch the leaf and you can find the veins in the leaf. The more you go into that state, and nature can actually shift you, help in shifting you. I remember I used to, I've mentioned this before, when I was in Darjeeling in school, my bed was here and there was a window right in front. And from my bed while I was sleeping, every morning I used to see the Kanchenjunga range. With the sun rising, the colors used to change. That scene is still in front of my eyes, and I can use that scene at any point in time to go into a meditative state, because it allows me to shift. So when we have these moments in nature, because nature has there is no if and but with the nature. There is no depleting feeling associated with nature. Suppose you think of your husband or your wife. There are many loving moments, but there are depleting moments also. But with nature, for 99% of the time, you will not have a depleting effect when you are looking at something beautiful in nature. So nature can actually connect us and put us into that sense of awe.
In the meaning phase of life, we remove the complexities that ego has foisted upon us, and the reverence we feel is often an intensely exhilarating sense of awe that we notice in nature. There's a newly experienced delight in hearing the wind howl, watching storms rage, and appreciating honeybees and butterflies do their job of pollinating the flowers.
So again, the small things of nature start to really affect us. We have this session in the Gateway Voyage and in the other 6-day programs, where we actually go into an altered state and walk out in nature. And let me tell you, when you are in that altered state and you observe nature, the effect of what you perceive becomes so different from the way that we normally perceive things. It is really phenomenal. There are some people who've done the Gateway Voyage over here. Do you remember that exercise, Mukul Bhabi?
Yeah, I do. Which one? Sorry.
Where you go into nature and then you're talking to nature.
Yeah, of course.
What was your experience about that exercise?
It was unbelievable because I didn't think I could feel the plants or I could feel their energy. And I was actually feeling it. We went on the terrace, I remember, and kind of we felt like some plants kind of connected to you and some plants did not. Even that was happening, so that was quite amazing.
Yeah. रविंद्र जी आपको याद है?
Yeah, the southeast corner of your terrace, there was a plant, and as if it was talking to me. I remember that.
Yeah. Ilabua, do you remember?
I do. When we were doing this exercise in Calcutta and Hyderabad, then there was this big gulmol tree that is in the house over here in Hyderabad. Some girls went there, and actually I could see eyes, eyes opening and shutting. And then when I asked you about it, you said, "Huh, but there are eyes in the tree which is looking at you and observing you." And then when we gave the hug, it gave a different hug, And now I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it.
Yeah.
There was one small mango tree in the corner, and one girl had gone there and she said that this time there won't be any fruit. The tree is telling there won't be any fruit. I said, "How did you?" Then I said, "Let me also go and ask." Said, "Yes, this year I will not give you any fruit. Next year I will." Things like this did happen.
Yeah. So you can actually connect with nature. You can talk to nature, and even the insects, the butterflies, the bees, you can see into a flower and you can see the vibrant colors, the veins which are there. When you really deeply connect, you can actually feel the sap flowing in the trees. That's the kind of effect and that's the kind of feeling that you can actually generate when you are going into these altered states and connecting with nature in a deeper level.
Why nature only? You can talk to the inanimate objects also.
Absolutely. So inanimate objects also, very nicely put. Again, I keep repeating this book that we have, The Secret Life of Inanimate Objects. And let me tell you, you can actually connect with your inanimate objects and they talk back to you. So many times when we go for Vastu energy rectification in people's houses, we will find that one showpiece is not happy. Okay. And then we say, okay, why you're not happy? This guy doesn't even touch me. He doesn't even care for me. I'm lying here doing nothing. So things like that start to happen. Everything has life. And when we start connecting and we start having that deep reverence for everything around us, everything starts to work with us. It starts to behave in a different manner with us. Okay, so you will find, I keep repeating the story, which is again in that Secret Life of Inanimate Objects. Many of you may not have heard the story. There was this studio and there was this panel in that studio, and many times that panel used to go on the blink, and try what they may, they could not fix that panel. And there was this one technician, he used to just go and stand in front of the panel, and immediately the panel used to start working again. Now it so happened that that technician, he retired. Now again the panel went on blink and they could not fix it. They did not know how to fix it. So someone got a bright idea. They went to that technician's house, and the cloak that he used to wear or the clothes that he used to wear while doing the stuff over there, they got that cloak back into the studio, and they put the cloak in front of the panel, and the panel immediately started. So that cloak became very, very revered in the whole studio, because whenever the panel used to go in the blink, they used to bring that cloak and it used to start off again. So things like that can also start happening.
The first cardinal virtue manifests itself as unconditional love and respect for ourselves and other beings. When we revere all of life, the desire to interfere, dominate, or control anyone is non-existent.
So now this is very important, okay? It says unconditional love in respect to ourselves. Now, if we don't love ourselves, then it is impossible for us to love someone else, because whatever is in us is going to radiate out. We cannot give something that we don't have. So unless we have love for ourselves, we cannot give love out. So that's the first rule, that we must be compassionate. We must care for ourselves. That becomes extremely important. And then naturally, when you go into that state, then you have reverence for everything around you.
We adhere to these sweet words of the poet Robert Frost. We love the things we love for what they are. When we practice this first cardinal virtue, we don't ask that people, or anything else for that matter, live according to our expectations, which is what ego loves to do.
Okay, so now ego wants to control people all the time. That is why we have the control dramas that I keep referring to from the Celestine prophecy. Again, there are 4 types of control dramas. One is the intimidator, the inquisitor, the aloof, and the poor me. If I'm in a control drama, that means I'm attempting to suck energy out of the other person, which is not a place that is very healthy to be in, because when you're operating in a control drama, you're always on the left side of the grid. And that is where the ego operates from. So the control dramas have to drop. We have to give love, and the universe will provide that love back to us, because what we give out will come back to us manyfold.
There are 2 ways to have the tallest building in town. One is ego's way, which is to knock the other buildings down until it has the tallest one. The problem with this method is that it creates constant conflict. People dislike when their accomplishments have been destroyed or diminished. Anger is the first response, followed by force, which is met with counterforce, and soon all-out war is being waged.
So again, if we are operating from ego, then it's not a win-win situation. It is always a win-lose situation where I have the upper hand in lieu of the other guy. Now that will always create conflict, because the other guy is going to retaliate, whether we like it or not, because you are pushing the other guy down. It's not a win-win. Okay, so conflict is bound to be created when we operate from the egocentric method.
This is the way of ego reverence or love for others' accomplishments, only a need to compete and emerge victorious to proclaim superiority. In fact, ego is always on the lookout for someone with the temerity to try to top it.
So ego always wants to be on the top. Okay. So if someone is on the top, it always wants to set the crab mentality, pull the other guy down and get on top of him. So the crab mentality ultimately doesn't work, because all the crabs want to get out of the bucket, but since they're pulling each other down, none of them get out of the bucket.
The second way to have the tallest building in town is the way of spirit, which offers meaning over ambition. This way urges us to put energy into our own building and respect others' efforts to do the same. There's no need to compete or triumph. There's no force, which always results in counterforce.
So again, there are 2 ways of operating, using force and using power. Okay, force will always create a counter reaction, but when you're operating from power, you're on the right side of the grid. So again, I'm referring to David Hawkins' book, Power versus Force, and the levels of consciousness. Now, where are you operating from in that scale of consciousness? They say that humanity as a whole is operating at 200, and anything above 200 goes on to the right side of the grid. Monday we'll just see that list also, and it's pretty amazing to understand where are we operating from. The left side and the right side are very simplistic. It's a very simplistic process. But exactly where you're operating from can come from that list. It's like shame is literally at the bottom of the list. Okay. 200 is at courage.
Reverence for all life involves love and respect for each of God's creatures, the planet and the universe as well. When we practice this first cardinal virtue, we are at peace with the world and with ourselves. In the meaning phase of life, we replace struggle with being ourselves, being lived by the great Tao.
So again, in the meaning phase of life, we replace the struggle with being ourselves. Now, most of the time we have a facade over us. We are attempting to look good most of the time rather than actually being who we are. When you are who you are, there is no effort required. It becomes effortless. When you are attempting to be something you're not, that time it requires effort. Like when an actor is acting on stage, it requires effort for the actor to be in that character that he is displaying. But if you are just being yourself, then you don't need any effort. So the moment you start dropping the facade, you stop operating out of ego, just accepting who you are and being that, automatically you shift into operating from force. I mean from power.
2. Natural sincerity. The second cardinal virtue speaks to honesty in our daily lives. This doesn't necessarily mean that we'll refrain from breaking rules. Rather, we're guided to enjoy an existence that is characterized by authenticity.
So again, characterized by authenticity. So there is no facade left. You are what you are. You're being your authentic self. You're not acting. Okay. And that's where that gentleness and that power comes. You can be yourself. Natural sincerity.
In the ego-driven ambition phase, our false or inauthentic self is essentially in charge. That's when our idea of who we are is based on accumulating, achieving, gaining approval, and enhancing our separateness as an emblem of our superiority. It's impossible to be naturally sincere if we're attempting to be someone other than who we truly are, which is what happens when ego calls the shots.
So again, he's repeating basically the same thing, that if we are out to achieve, if we are out to beat the other guy, then it is an ego-centered kind of a thing. But when we are operating from meaning, from an expanded state of consciousness, then we are not in competition. We are doing stuff because we enjoy doing it, because we like doing it. We are not in competition with anyone. So the falsity which is there in competitiveness goes out of the window.
As William Shakespeare puts it in Hamlet, God has given you one face and you make yourself another. When you alter your face to fit ego's image of who you are, you lose the ability to be naturally sincere. This quality results when you allow others to know you, without being afraid or worrying about how you're being perceived. Your speech and behavior basically send this message. This is who I am. I came into this world with an inner calling to fulfill a destiny that will never be silenced.
So again, when you drop the facade and you connect with your authentic self, okay, then you are in the flow. You are connected with your life journey is all about. So you're not bothered with what the other guy is saying because you know that you're on the right path. And then you tread that path with sincerity, without any kind of falsity around you. And you're genuine and gentle about it.
This provocative line, which is attributed to the children's author Dr. Seuss, underscores the meaning of the second cardinal virtue. Be who you are and say what you feel, because those who mind don't matter and those who matter don't mind.
This is beautiful, right? If you are authentic, then whatever you are saying and the other person is also authentic and actually matters to you, they will listen to you and they will not be bothered by what you are saying. But if the guy doesn't matter and he gets upset with what you are saying, it really doesn't matter because that guy actually doesn't matter. So again, you have to, it has been said that today, if you want to understand what a person is, then look at the 5 people that the person associates with the most, because that person will be the sum total of those 5 people. Okay, so our character is decided by the company we keep, and this has been said in all the spiritual these things also, that you have to be aware of the company that you keep. So the people who matter in your life is what you will ultimately become. So you have to be very careful with the company you keep, keeping this in mind.
This provocative line, which is attributed to the children's author Dr. Seuss, underscores the meaning of the second cardinal virtue. Be who you are and say what you feel, because those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. It's so true. Those who matter won't mind your natural sincerity, yet they will absolutely relish your fulfilling an inner sense of purpose and living a meaningful life. They want you to experience the joy of exploring, becoming more of who you are, rather than striving to get someplace or become someone you really aren't.
Anyone who's really important, okay, the person who is genuine about you is always going to want you to be your authentic self. They are not going to ask you to portray something that you are not. Now, what happens in society? Most of the people will give you the opposite kind of advice. So, your awareness and your consciousness plays a very, very important part in this game. Okay, so that you can operate out of awareness rather than just being blind to as to what is happening.
I often speak with people who are sadly out of sync with their original nature. They describe unhappiness and frustration regarding their jobs, loathing the suits and ties they're required to wear, the hours they have to keep, and the people they work with.
Okay, so now what happens over here? Okay, now this is like square pegs in round holes. So most of the people are living lives which they really don't enjoy, they are not happy with. Many times what happens is parents force people to do something that they don't want to do. In Three Idiots, we saw that very clearly. All three of them wanted to do something else, but the parents, two of them wanted to do something else, but the parents were forcing them to do something else. Now, naturally, you're not going to be happy when that kind of a situation takes place. And these people you'll find will be the most grumpy of the lot. Okay. So now if you are sad and out of sync with what your original life purpose was, it is very difficult to be happy. So finding what your calling is, your true calling, becomes very, very important. And that you can only do when you shift a state of consciousness. Because when you are in the soup, it is very difficult to understand what the soup is all about. So you have to take a witness attitude. You have to step out of the soup. And that is why you need to go into these altered states to really understand what is happening at that lower state of consciousness.
In general, these individuals are living from a very dishonest place, directed by factors that they believe define them. Of course, when asked if they're honest, they insist that they are.
Okay, now this is also very important here. The individuals are living from a dishonest place, directed by factors they believe define them. So how is the normal person defining himself? How much money do you have? What is the kind of house I live in? What is the car I drive? How do I look? How many friends do I have? Which parties am I called to? These are the factors that determine your own state of consciousness or your own state of what he says over here is by the factors that define them. So you're defining yourself by these factors. But actually what are you? You're that inner state of consciousness, that inner state of being. That is your authentic self. But we disconnect from that authentic self and we get caught up in the material things, which are the external factors, which are actually not important because they're not permanent. Today you associate with one group of people, tomorrow you'll find they'll shift out and someone else will come. But today you own a house, tomorrow you'll shift your house. Today you own a factory, tomorrow the factory may go away. Today you own one car, tomorrow if you get a better car, then you leave the original car. So what are we hanging on? What are we creating our definitions about ourselves from? That becomes very important when we want to live an authentic and an honest life. Okay, because all these things are dishonest. They are actually not you.
But the truth is that their lives are often devoid of meaning, and they don't have a sense of fulfilling a dharma that they came here to actualize.
So again, they are not living the life that they actually came here to fulfill. So they are not on their own timeline. They have shifted out of the timeline. You see, this was very well illustrated in that movie, Back to the Future. This timeline concept was beautifully illustrated, that how our actions can shift our timeline. I think maybe, we can watch some movies also in this session. The next one, I think Mukul Bhavi has already watched Fringe. She sent me the episodes. So maybe after we finish this book, we'll start watching Fringe, maybe 1 or 2 episodes of Fringe, and then we'll shift to Ekagai. And, so it'll just give a break between the book reading and the videos. Let's see.
I always invite men and women who are in this situation to ponder this quote from Thoreau, which encourages natural sincerity. If one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours.
So what does this mean? That when one life starts living on the paths that they were meant to be living, then synchronicity starts to take place. One thing will fall in place with the other. So automatically things start happening. Effort becomes effortless. Okay. Trying becomes happening. So things will happen. You don't have to try. It'll happen. And the more trusting you become of the process, the more beautiful it starts to become. The resistance, when you drop the resistance, the main problem is we come in the way of that divine consciousness which is actually running us. Today, we hardly have 5% or maybe 3% of control over what's happening in our own body. And we think that we can control the whole environment. Okay, it doesn't work like that. When you're shifting into spirituality, you allow things to happen rather than attempting to make them happen. So it says here, you'll met with a success unexpected in common hours. So what the effort that you make will become so much effort will result in so much effect. Whereas if you're living from an effortful way, you'll make so much effort and the result will be so much.
Don't ask what the world needs. Don't ask what others think you should be doing with your life. Instead, ask yourself what makes you come alive.
Okay, now this is very, very important. What makes you come alive? So that is what your real calling is. So, you need to sit down one day and just introspect that what makes you come alive when you're doing it. Whether it's cooking, whether it is knitting, whether it is talking to people, whether it is sweeping the floor, I don't know. But what is it that makes you come alive? That is what that clicker is. That is what is important in your life. But what are we doing? We are doing the rigmarole. We are going around and round in circles, not even giving ourselves the time to even analyze what makes you happy, what makes you come alive. This happened to me personally. I was doing a lot of Vastu visits, etc. And then at some point it became a little boring for me because it became repetitive. So I said, okay, I'm taking a break. So I stopped doing it. And then I went back into the family business and I started doing it. And then one day I was meditating and I was simply sitting and thinking, when was I happy? And I found that I was happy when I was roaming around doing Vastu and the stuff that we are doing now, rather than being in the business. And I consciously made that decision and shifted back. So I made myself irrelevant in my own office, to be frank with you. And today I feel I'm a much happier person. I'm doing what I enjoy doing and I'm doing it for the love of doing it. So whether anyone comes, doesn't come, you make money, you don't make money, it's not important anymore. So this is what makes me come alive. And this is what I'm doing. So I would strongly recommend to all of you, whoever is here, that, sit down one day and think about what makes you come alive and make a note of it. And then indulge in that a little more than the other thing. I'm not saying drop everything like me. That would be a little crazy because you need to set certain parameters in place. And we live in this real world, in the 3D world, whether we like it or not. as much as we would like to live in that expanded state. So we need to take care of this world and then shift into that expanded state.
Instead, ask yourself what makes you come alive, because more than anything else, what the world truly needs are men and women who have come alive. What the world needs is the natural sincerity of people living their passion in a way that makes other people's lives better.
So now this is again important right here. Now today, when you are living your passion and you're doing what you enjoy doing, you will always create value in another person's life. But when you're doing something that you don't enjoy doing and you are operating from the left side of the grid, it is impossible for you to create value in another person's life. You can create value in another person's life only when you're operating from the right side of the grid. Okay, and if you're not alive, then you're not on the right side of the grid.
This is what being authentic looks like. And this, in my humble opinion, is what Lao Tzu meant when he called the second cardinal virtue of natural sincerity something that shows up as honesty and a determination to be faithful to one's truest, most authentic self.
So again, making that deeper inner connection with yourself and then operating from there.
3. Gentleness. The third cardinal virtue for living from a position of meaning points to kindness and consideration of others.
So again, compassion. Okay, it's simply compassion. When you operate out of compassion, true, genuine compassion, not just a facade of compassion, you genuinely act out of compassion.
As you know by now, this isn't ego's style. The false self is constantly on the prowl to exert power over others since it feels separate. It also threatened by the competitive nature of all of its relationships, and the need to exert force comes from that. And then, of course, the inevitable counterforce erupts when egos clash.
So again, the false self, the ego, constantly wants one-upmanship. So it's wanting to constantly put the other guy down, which always results in conflict. Okay, so compassion is not there when we are operating from ego.
Our highest self doesn't feel threatened by others because it doesn't embrace the concept of separateness.
So again, now this is important. When we are operating at a higher state of consciousness, then there is no separation. We are in cooperation. So we are giving love to each other. So everyone looks out for the other guy and the other guy looks out for you. So there is no question of any kind of conflict.
Not feeling separate, our desire for a purposeful life nurtures a sense of unity with all other beings. This feeling of connectedness flows in the direction of compassion. Ultimately, we reach out to the world with gentleness, humility, and kindness because we've returned to our original nature.
So our original nature, what is our original nature? We are part of that divine being, right? That divine being is extra compassionate, totally wanting the best for everyone. It doesn't want anyone to win or lose. It wants totally that everyone does better for themselves. So it's very kind, very compassionate. When we are going into these altered states of consciousness and we encounter beings, believe me when I tell you this, even when people have NDEs and OBEs, etc., we find that there is no concept of hell. There is nothing like that there. If there are something like that, there are ethnocentric beings over here in this middle world. When we look at shamanism, we have ethnocentric beings which are connected with, let's say, a village. They want to protect their own village. Then they can harm someone. But when we are going into these higher states, then they are all compassionate beings. They're always out to help us. There is no question in that.
In the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly.
So what is happening? Again, the concept of if the butterfly flutters its wings in Brazil, it affects the entire universe. So through the principle of resonance, everything affects everything else. Forget about an action. Even a thought that you have is resonating. It's out in the ethers. And if someone has the antenna to pick it up, you will pick up that transmission. Okay. And we are constantly transmitting and constantly receiving. Let me tell you, I used to have some of the best meditations when I didn't have HemiSync around. The best meditations I had in the aircraft. The reason is that there is something called the M field, which is there around the earth. Robert Monroe called it the M field. And it is the M field is where each and every one of us is a transmitter and a receiver. Okay. So we are constantly transmitting stuff, whether we like it or not. Every thought that we have is being transmitted, and that is collected in the M field. So when we are flying above the M field, that time there are no thoughts, there is silence over there. So you can have some of your best meditations when you are flying in the aircrafts. Shivangla, we've lost you. Yeah, now stop.
We won't experience meaning as long as we are focused on violence, thinking of conquering and vanquishing others, regardless of how compelling the reasons, prevents us from exercising the gentleness of our original nature.
So
As the Tao teaching tells us,
whenever we are wanting to be one upon the other, it always will constitute violence because it doesn't constitute cooperation. Okay. So as soon as we go into that higher state, then we don't want any violence. If you'll see any highly spiritual person will never advocate violence. They will always advocate compassion and gentleness.
as the Tao teaching tells us, weapons are meant for destruction and must be avoided by the wise. Weapons aren't restricted to instruments of death, they're also the words and actions we use.
This is very beautiful. They are also the words and actions we use. I add thoughts because your thought can also affect the other person. आज ये जो नजर लग जाता है, that we say ना नजर लग जाता है. So what is that? Many times it is inadvertent that the person who is creating that effect doesn't even have that conscious realization that they are creating that particular effect. Okay. So as we start growing in our states of consciousness, we have to start becoming aware of our thoughts also. So forget about speaking it. Even our thinking it becomes a problem. So what are you putting in? It's like a computer, garbage in, garbage out. So what are you putting into your head? That becomes very important now. Because whatever is going in, that is what is bound to come out. So what is the company you're keeping? What is the books you're reading? What are the TV shows you're seeing? What is happening around you? What are you indulging in? All starts becoming very important.
Considering the importance of gentleness in living a meaningful life, we see how it leads us towards oneness. Both Lao Tzu and Jesus observed the constant warfare that existed between people and communities and admonished us to go with our highest nature if we desire meaning and purpose in our lives.
So again, you cannot get meaning from ambition. You have to connect with that deeper flow, that why did we come here? Understanding that becomes extremely important if we would like to be happy and contented in life.
How many people have perished because of man's inhumanity to man, which is the work of the false self? And for what? So many innocent beings in ancient villages have been slaughtered over who's going to rule the land, occupy the hilltop, or own the kingdom. A look at history reveals centuries of violence, with the 20th century being the most violent of all. And where are we today? Have we finally found a way to live together as one, as our highest nature implores us to do? We build weapons and store them in silos and submarines with the potential to terminate life on our planet for centuries to come. This absurdity results from so many of us acting exclusively on the directives of our egos.
So any kind of conflict always comes from ego, to be one up on the other guy.
We need to make the shift away from those perverse ego ambitions towards an existence that's more meaningful to all of us on planet Earth. If we make that shift and extend kindness and gentleness while eschewing violence, we'll feel the difference in our lifetime. We'll feel that we are finally home, thinking and acting like our source of being. We'll feel true purpose. We'll feel the joyful authenticity of a life based on meaning.
So if competition is out of the window, you are really doing what you really want to do, and you are happy doing it and you feel alive doing it, automatically meaning will come and flow into your life. So ambition will go out of the window.
4. Supportiveness. The fourth cardinal virtue informs us that we are eternally supported in the process of living authentically.
So again here, we all, and it has been seen by everyone who's gone into expanded states, we always have guides and masters around us. They are always there, let me tell you. The point is that we do not raise our level of consciousness, we don't raise our level of perception to actually perceive whether they are there or they are not there. Let me tell you from experience, I'm telling you that you always have support. There are always people around you. And it's a matter of just calling out and the support will come. That is the basic point over here. Okay. So even when we are doing a puja, for example, when we do the affirmation, the gateway affirmation, we are calling for help. We are asking for help and support. The point is the ego hates to ask for support. But when we are going into meaning, that is the time when we don't feel any kind of a pressure in asking for support. Because the ego is not there. You are acting out of kindness, out of simplicity. And then you are reciprocating that simplicity. There is this movie, I don't know how many of you all would have seen it, Pay It Forward. Beautiful concept. That do something for someone else and don't ask for anything back. Just tell that person now you do it for someone else also. Just imagine in a world where everyone would be doing stuff for another person all the time, would any conflict kind of exist? Conflict would go out of the window because everyone was doing for everyone else.
We let go of the ambition imposed upon us by ego and relax into the meaning that supports our particular life. Supportiveness manifests as service to others without expectation of reward or even a thank you. It's the quintessential component of feeling that life has a purpose. It's the surest way to learn how to think like God thinks.
So again, when we shift our state of consciousness to being of service to others, to create a difference in another person's life, to bring meaning to another person's life, then, and without ego, okay, just doing it because you become alive when you do it. That's when you get more and more meaning into your own life.
It's the quintessential component of feeling that life has a purpose. It's the surest way to learn how to think like God thinks, which was Albert Einstein's primary motivation in attempting to unravel the mystery of creation. When we see ourselves as divine, individualized expressions of God, we are more inclined to want to understand how the creative force operates. What does God do with his hands? Does he ask for special treatment? Does he request help? Does he expect us to be grateful? Does he hoard things for himself? Does he worry about how his work is judged? These are questions acquired from the false self, questions for which we create myths and stories to answer. Yet, the true answer to these rhetorical questions is The only thing that God does with his hands is give, create, and offer over and over again. That's it.
So now does the sun is shining. All our energy comes from the sun. Everything moves because of the sun. But the sun, does it ask for anything? Forget the sun. Does anything in nature ask for anything in return? And everything that we have has come from nature. And if we can see the hand of God in everything and start becoming God-like, then we will also constantly start to give. So the main thing to create meaning in your life and to become alive, one of the things is to start giving. And what will you give? What you have, right? So get that which is valuable and create meaning to someone else's life so that you can start giving it. And for that, first you need to start loving yourself. You need to start connecting with what your state of consciousness is, to what is your state of inner consciousness. When you do that, only then can you start giving authentically. Otherwise, it all becomes an egoistic kind of a drama.
This fourth cardinal virtue tells us that our original nature and the purpose of life is like the sun. If we ask the sun why it always gives light, its answer would assuredly most likely be, it's my nature to do so. The only thing we can do with life is give it away. Anything and everything else is the way of achievements or acquisitions mean nothing in the context of our purpose as spiritual beings having a human experience. We do not attract what we want. We attract what we are.
So this is beautiful, right? Now again, we saw when we were doing zero limits, when we read Dark Side of the Light Worker,
Chasers.
Light Chasers, sorry. So what was that? We will create in our life what we resonate with. Whatever is the resonance in us, that is what is going to manifest in our lives. It doesn't matter what we want, but what are we resonating? That is what gets created in our life. So the more we give, the more we will get, because that is what is resonating in our life.
The prayer of Saint Francis of Assisi makes clear that it is in giving that we receive. Giving aligns us with the way our source of being acts. Consequently, the universe offers us experiences that match our giving, supportive nature.
So again, whatever you are resonating, that is what will resonate back to you.
Earlier, I described the way the universe responds back to us in the same vibrating energy that we send out. How may I serve is the energy of support we send out and receive in return.
So now, if I'm sending out that energy, that how do I support, then what's going to come back to me? Same thing, right? How do I support you? So again, we are giving and we are getting back. It's not that we are trying to grab. So we are shifting our state of consciousness.
We see the beauty of this approach to life not in the stuff we attract, but in a wondrous sense of contentment that replaces our ambitious, self-centered demands. We are living the meaning of life.
I think we can stop here. You want to continue? I don't think we'll make it.
Okay.
Let's stop here, I think. Anyone, anything to say?